Are we in an AI bubble, and what does that mean for you? Okay, so a recent MIT study examined 52 organizations that have collectively spent 30 to 40 billion dollars deploying over 300 generative AI initiatives. What it revealed was 95% of these initiatives actually achieved zero measurable profit. That is 285 of the 300 initiatives that cost 30 to 40 billion dollars to implement achieved no profit. Okay, that means only 15 of these did any measurable profit. Okay. Meanwhile, in the first half of 2025, AI companies accounted for 75% of S&P 500 returns, 80% of earnings growth, and 90% of capital investment growth since ChatGPT was launched in November 2022. Just to be clear, capital investment, what that actually means is it's long-term investments into things like buildings and infrastructure, so real estate or building airports and I don't know, trains and planes and stuff. It's capital investments. Meanwhile, as we have this crazy run on the S&P 500 powered by AI companies, Microsoft as an individual company spent $35 billion on AI infrastructure in the 3 months leading up to September 2025, that's this year. And yet their stock fell by 4%, despite growing revenues by 18% and 12% net income increase. All right, okay. A recent Bank of America survey found that 54% of investors believe AI stocks are in a bubble. And even Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, admitted that investors are overexcited about AI and that it's insane that 3-person startups can achieve sky-high valuations. Final one is a point from Goldman Sachs CEO. He basically said that there is going to be a drawdown at some point, meaning these prices will crash. And I guess like maybe if we think about like the shape of a bubble, it's circular. And the one like thing that I think has kind of been setting alarm bells off for people like me who, I'm pretty much just a layman who goes onto Reddit and reads up on whatever we all think as a hive mind, is the recent investment from NVIDIA into OpenAI. So NVIDIA are the people who make the NVIDIA chips that power all of the AI data centers. They invested $100 billion into OpenAI, and guess what that is going to be spent on? NVIDIA chips. So they are giving OpenAI the $100 billion they need to power OpenAI with their own chips, and taking a nice chunky stake, I'm sure, out of that company as they do it. Feels like a bit of a circle jerk. All right, so go on, Slow.
Thinking about the same time, give or take a couple of days, OpenAI has bought a stake in AMD, Advanced Micro Devices, who are like NVIDIA's arguably biggest competition in the space. So if you own NVIDIA stock now, they now own a chunk of OpenAI, who own a chunk of AMD. So like the circle jerk is sort of, it's a big circle, and everyone's holding, well, whatever you hold in a circle jerk. Everyone's holding everyone else's. Anyway, I'll let you get back
That's
to it.
right. Yeah, we had to keep the analogy in there. I mean, it continues. I saw yesterday that after I prepped for this, that they were buying $39 billion worth of compute from Amazon, not as a stake, but just as a service. So yeah, it goes in so many different directions. So yeah, I think we'll move on to, why is this different from 1999? So I'm going to have to admit, both you and I are a little bit too young to really have clocked what was happening back then. 5, 6, 7 years of age, both of us. But I think we will have all heard about the internet bubble. Okay. So this is effectively when internet companies with no revenue and no business plan disappeared overnight. Another one we will be more familiar with is the 2008 crash, which is where defaults on bad debt sent the economy into a tailspin. All right. So why is this different from those two occasions? Well, the first and most important thing is that the massive investments are coming from the world's most profitable companies. Companies like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta. They are actually using cash flow. They're using profits to pay for this. They're not using borrowed money or blind speculation. I mean, it is speculation, but they're not borrowing against it. It's just their own cash flow and stockpiles of cash. Actually, this was made easier because a couple of years ago, the US made it easier to repatriate cash that's stored in offshore accounts. So there's like tens and tens of billions of dollars that have flown. I think it's almost $100 billion just for Microsoft that moved from Ireland back into the US. So they've just been sat on that. And the other thing as well to remember is that these companies continue to post record profits, irrespective of their AI spending. So they kind of shield the broader economy a little bit there. Okay. So the only thing to remember here is that where there is a potential 100 times return, of course, traditional investors and sources of capital will try and take part, will try and invest. So I'm talking about like your more traditional investors, not just these FANG companies. So what that means is if you are raising money today, the price of borrowing will likely be higher, and the competition will also be tough because really, are you going to be offering these 100 times returns, even if they're not realistic? It's a phenomenon that happened actually in the 1990s called the Death Star effect, which is where like the Death Star in Star Wars, it sucked up all of the resources and then just exploded, which meant that there was less money available in the economy for other things. But I think ultimately the fact that most of these investments are made by these FANG companies with the actual cash, the rest of the economy should be, and prevailing wisdom is that the rest of the economy should be somewhat shielded from the effects of this time around at least. So let's think back about those 95% of AI initiatives that didn't yield any profits. And just think why. Okay. So one of the reasons why AI isn't necessarily yielding those crazy returns right now is because deploying AI remains stubbornly expensive. What I mean by that is there's a few things that slow it down. So data quality. If you're a big company, effectively, if you want to use AI on your data, it needs to be shit hot and clean. That's easier said than done. Skills and expertise. So as you've probably seen, and we've mentioned before in here, how much money do you pay the best AI engineers in the world? Well, just think about Meta. Giving people 9-figure salaries shows you how competitive it is for that kind of skill base. So yeah, of course, there's not enough people to go around and help these companies integrate AI initiatives into their workflows. Go on,
I wondered on the data quality and the inputs and training up the models side of things, whether you have looked more into the talk about the snake that eats its own tail, the AI models that consume their own AI slop and therefore and shitify themselves by engorging themselves on shit.
Well, that is problematic. And I suspect strongly that these huge AI companies are putting in as many precautions as they can do to stop that from happening. It won't be foolproof, I'm sure.
Yeah, I guess I mean the only sort of counterpoint to that theory that AI is going to get worse because it's going to be consuming its own shit is it must be having to figure out a way to digest quite a lot of human generated shit as well. Like there's quite a lot of nonsense that you wouldn't want your AI that's, I don't know, going to drive your car for you or decide whether or not you need to have your operation now or later. You know, whatever it is, critical decision making, we're deferring to them. Those AI models are already having to pass their way through quite a lot of shit that
Yeah, and
we
that shit that
create.
comes from everywhere. Like, think about,
Mm.
let's not get political, but people like RFK Jr. Like they probably have to filter out a lot of his opinions when they're talking about health advice, where maybe like previous health secretaries they would not have done. um, but yeah, so it's true though. It's a good point. A few other reasons why it's been quite hard to implement AI, and the reason I'm going to labor these is because perhaps there's opportunities here as well. So financial constraints and unclear return on investment. So sometimes it's hard to attribute like how much of a return we'd be getting. So we talk about those 95% of AI initiatives that did not yield any profits. Perhaps they weren't tangible profits. One of the things we talk about at work actually is it's augmenting, it's improving. It's not necessarily doing it automatically, but maybe it's improving the quality of the output, which isn't necessarily very easy to measure as a return on investment, not tangibly anyway. Also, of course, organization and cultural resistance. Even in the tech industry, I hear all the time, I don't like AI. I don't trust or believe in AI. Those kinds of apprehensions are only going to slow down the adoption of AI. And of course, I think this is probably the most important one, really, on many levels, is security, privacy, and ethical concerns. So I think, like with any fear of an AI model hallucinating and making up some absolute nonsense, back to the health advice perspective, yes, sure, it's fine to ask ChatGPT, I have this issue. What do you think it might be? But ultimately, the NHS, is not going to put out an AI model that can hallucinate to diagnose people with problems. Like, they can't. And that's true of many things. And it's not just on like the kind of the huge nuclear level of somebody's health, but it could also just be of a company reputation level. You don't want it to give out some phony, terrible advice, which is going to cause harm to your customers. So yeah, effectively though, what that means is the AI adoption will take years, not months. It will take time and patience to see this come to fruition. And really, building data centers takes years anyway. So of course it will.
So are we in an AI bubble then?
So prevailing wisdom is yes, we are. But that doesn't necessarily have to be bad news for you. Downside, if worst comes to worst, these huge AI companies will go to zero. Some of them will. I suspect not all of them. But the thing is, the infrastructure will still exist. I heard a few years ago, I heard the analogy of like the railways. And effectively, in like the 19th century, we invented this incredible technology and the private sector ran into it. They overbuilt, particularly in the US, they overbuilt these railroads just because of competition. And what happened was a lot of these companies go bust, but the railways still exist and they're used for public utility even to this day. So effectively, the technology is here to stay even if the bubble bursts. What people believe is that rather than a sudden crash, we'll likely head towards gradual deflation. This means some AI startups will completely fail. Valuations will compress for unprofitable companies. Capital will consolidate around those profitable companies, and the broader economy will feel the squeeze as AI infrastructure spending slows. Just remember, someone's got to build these AI data centers, chips, and those jobs will go if we stop spending money on this infrastructure. Okay, so what does that mean if you're in a traditional job? So the news is mixed. Goldman Sachs estimates that AI could displace 6 to 7% of the US workforce if widely adopted. But they expect this to be temporary, citing that historically job displacements from technology disappear within about 2 years. We'll have to see how this goes, but this will take a while. Go ahead.
I guess the thing that I often hear and seems to have a lot of merit is every other technological development before was a sharper and sharper tool. This technological development replaces the thing that holds the tool, which has always been us. So yeah, what do you think about those stats of, temporary job displacement and then future job creation, and how much can we lean on history as a predictor of the future here, do you think?
I think it's concerning, right? And I think like one of the main selling points of this is like, hey, this can replace like certain functions and tasks. But just think, would you hook your own emails up to ChatGPT and let it run for you? You wouldn't. It's capable of doing it, but you wouldn't trust it and you wouldn't want to be out of the loop either. So, yeah, I agree. There are certain things where it's going to speed up people's ability to do their job. So, for example, yeah, I might not let it just hook it up automatically, but I might let it draft out something, and then I hit send. Keeps you in the loop. It just makes you much more efficient. I do know what you mean though, and that is exactly where my mind went initially when I read what Goldman Sachs had to say about this. I do think it's one of these things we'll have to wait to see how it plays out. Again, with adoption as well, like one of the biggest challenges is adoption in the workplace. If people are not adopting it, then it's not going to have the impact that we will, or the technologists promise and have like kind of sold to these companies and governments. But yeah, so I think it's a good challenge, and I think going to see time will tell. So yeah, it's interesting for sure. I think like the one thing that is most pressing at the moment actually is the entry level positions. So these are roles that are being hit pretty hard. I looked into this and effectively, well, not effectively, literally 27,000 tech sector jobs have been lost since 2023, which has been attributed to AI driven redundancy. And the majority of those jobs were in entry level positions. Okay. So basically, what that means is AI excels at doing things that junior employees are good at. So things like collecting data, basic analysis, and routine documentation. So just writing up like standard operating procedures, etc. However, roles that require complex problem solving, creativity, emotional intelligence, and leadership are holding firm. So the types of things that you progress into after you've done your, apprenticeship, working your way up through the ranks of your corporate company. What that does mean, and I think this is a challenge for the broader economy, not necessarily you and your job, is that in 5-10 years time, who will be coming through as that next level of medium to like high experience, high value employees? I don't know. Perhaps AI will have to fill that void as well. Go ahead.
I think the question here is, how do we climb a ladder that's got the bottom three rungs taken out by AI? Or how do we make it such that others can, who have been knocked off their rung, who maybe, I don't know, would have had their first job on the till at McDonald's, like it's not probably a really great vocation that people are passionate about, but like it has social interaction and above all else, it has a paycheck and you learn responsibility and timekeeping and all that in your first job. Yeah, how do we get people prepped for these higher up rungs on the ladder? And how do we compensate for those that, perhaps like the pinnacle of their career due to limited educational opportunities and stuff would have been on the till at McDonald's? Like there are some people who like don't have the opportunities afforded them to assume roles at those higher rungs. So yeah, that's where my concern is, and I don't have a great solution.
I have an idea, which is going to be one of the take homes. So I think take note if this applies to you. It's the idea of doing a future proof skills audit. So thinking about the things that AI is not good at and ensuring that you fill those voids. So this is things like it's not very good at analytical thinking, creativity, communication, emotional intelligence, and actually technology literacy as well. Like irrespective of whether it is good at technology literacy, you will need to be technologically literate because that is who you're going to be interacting with. There are companies, particularly tech companies in the US, that already have agentic members of their teams, which are AI agents as a member of your team. So you need to know how to interact with these agents. I mean, let's not think too specifically about that for now. Let's focus on the things that we can address. So what I would suggest is taking a list, and don't just take my word for it. Maybe do an exercise with ChatGPT. I know it's ironic, but say, okay, tell me the things that I need to be good at to be able to survive in an AI-powered workforce or an an agentic workforce. Take a list of those and then just rate yourself out of 5 for each of these skills. And where you see the lowest skills is where you should focus your effort. So you say, okay, maybe I'm a good communicator, but I'm not very technologically literate. At which point you say, okay, I need to focus on my technology. So maybe I'll sign up for a short course or read a book, or again, just ask ChatGPT how you can improve your skills there. So yeah, that's what I do. Just make sure you develop the skills that AI is currently not able to do, and to make yourself like, rather than fighting it and just like burying your head in the sand, like it is the direction of travel, even if it's like, whether that's over a 1, 5, 10-year period is where we're going. And like, I suspect people who fall into this bucket are people who have possibly got 30, 40 years of working ahead of them. So that would be the way, at least I believe, to address that. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah, because I guess my concern was that certain people can't afford to go to university, or they don't have one near them, or their local university is still doing quite archaic, academically interesting subjects that don't get you a job. And so my concern was, yeah, around that really, of if you're going to be AI displaced, or you're going to age into, what previously would have existed as a first-time role, first-time job, what will you do instead? I think we spoke previously on a different podcast that universities still have the monopoly on really expensive pieces of paper, degree certificates. If you want to be a dentist or a doctor or a lawyer, then you'd better go to dental, medical, or law school. But there are lots of far less regulated, well-paid jobs, and some of them you can invest in yourself in your own time from the comfort of your own home. You just need an internet-enabled device, isn't it? So investing in yourself, I guess, is one of the real big takeaways, is it, for AI future-proofing?
100%. And like, the really positive thing is, honestly, I say it the third time now, ironically enough, AI is one of the best tools to give you, to empower you to have that kind of education. Also, honestly, the speed at which it's changing is probably not a bad thing, that we focus more on like more dynamic learning sources like ChatGPT or whatever, or even online digital courses, because yeah, I don't know how these university courses can keep up. Like by the time you finish a 3-year course, whatever you learn on day one could be out of date. So yeah, I think that's it though. It's just be acknowledging, like, don't bury your head in the sand. I know it's hard and it's quite daunting. I actually personally feel very lucky to have just about come through like at the right time, just ahead of this AI curve. But that also does present challenges to people in our age category. It's nipping my toes. I'm thinking, okay, what happens if that model gets more powerful, and what does that mean for me? So I think we're all in a position where we have to and make sure we sharpen our skills and make sure we're ahead of any kind of learning curve or improvement in AI. But yeah, it's scary. It is.
Yeah. Which I guess, like you're saying, you've used AI, or you've used your own brain, or you've used something to come up with a list of AI complementary, or just things that AI is not good at. So yeah, we don't want to outrun AI in a direct foot race at something that it's good at. We want to pick a different race and really excel in that other race. And yeah, then like you said, AI can augment us, and we can augment it if we have the right skills.
That is exactly the right metaphor. A foot race. You're not going to beat Sam Altman and ChatGPT. Cool. Let's change this slightly, and let's have a little think about, what does that mean if you're starting a business? So, while the majority of AI startups are kind of seen feasibly as a expensive demo, they're functional, but they're not a sustainable business. The interesting thing is that the technology that powers these companies will outlive the current hype cycle. So, the critical insight is, the AI bubble isn't about the technological potential. It's about the risks that businesses will misapply it. So what does that mean? I labored through a few of the reasons why companies are struggling and are slow at adopting AI. Now, it's important because the companies that will survive are those solving specific, measurable business problems and not just adopting AI because it's trendy. So it's not like saying, okay, I have a dog grooming salon, but I need to somehow incorporate AI, and that way I will like be able to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, because frankly, that's not a good use of AI. It's actually thinking, okay, if I'm going to use AI, I have to use it in a way that solves an actual problem. So I've got an exercise to do. Right. So let's think about those. Let's think about those issues, and I've selected two in particular that I think maybe future entrepreneurs can help with. So, firstly, is trying to prove a clear return on investment. All right, this is one of the reasons why companies don't do it. So, set aside 20 minutes of your time and list real everyday pain points in your job, in your business or industry. Okay. And just think, okay, these are issues that I have or I'm aware of, and ask, okay, could AI somehow help me solve these issues? If the answer to that is if you are able to use AI, whether that's using existing tools like ChatGPT, even if it's a little bit cumbersome to put everything in and get something out, if you make that workflow simpler, quicker, or better, then you've proved a return on investment. You've made it simpler to do, quicker to complete, or you've achieved a better outcome in some way, shape, or form. Let's say quality, for example. This will sharpen your entrepreneurial mindset and will avoid you thinking about building products just because AI can technically build a thing. That is not the right principle to come this from. You're thinking, what are real problems that I can solve for businesses, for my business, for my job, for my industry, or even just in your day-to-day workflow? And if you can do that with AI, then you've got a real solution to a real problem, which is where you can prove a clear return on investment. That's one thing. Another one of these skills is a gap in skills and expertise. So I used the example earlier of the 9-figure AI engineers at Meta. So you don't have to be those people. You just have to be one or two steps better than your everyday Joe who runs a company who could use AI to improve their outcomes as a business. So what you need to do there is you need to learn how to build AI workflows. I think if anyone remembers the previous episode on this, you'll remember Lindy and Gumloop. There are other ones as well, like NA10, which I would fully recommend. But if you are able to build these workflows, and secondly, just as importantly, help companies identify gaps in their own workflows where AI could help them, and then help them implement these solutions, that is a very valuable skill. I think all business leaders are thinking, how the heck can I implement AI? They are. They just don't know how. So if you can develop the skills to help them identify those gaps and then go ahead and implement the solution, then that is a remarkable business plan with like an incredible amount of demand right now. So those are the two places I'll go for. I would try and go for demonstrating something that has a real return on investment, something you're familiar with in your job, your business, your industry, or your own day-to-day workflow. If you can make it faster, better, or efficient, then yeah, that's clear. That proves a clear return on investment. Or if you are more technologically minded, perhaps you could learn about how to build AI workflows, identify the gaps for companies, and then implement those solutions. Yeah, that's how I'd approach it. Okay, so that would be the homework. The final take home is, yeah, the AI boom isn't ending tomorrow, but the era of good idea plus AI equals $100 million valuation is already shifting. The question isn't whether we're in a bubble. That's clear. We are. The question is how you position yourself as someone who shapes the technology's application to real problems. Or if you don't prepare, you could be caught downstream when the next capital cycle contracts, i.e., when this all comes home to roost and these huge companies don't have billions of dollars to just pile into AI infrastructure anymore because they've spent their cash. There we go. Be well, do good.